So this is the chapter on technology, and he reiterates really his thesis again. He says here that, this on page 39, we learned how to invent things, and the question of why receded in importance. The idea that if something could be done, it should be done was born in the 19th century. And along with it, there developed a profound belief in all the principles through which invention succeeds: objectivity, efficiency, expertise, standardization, measurement, a market economy, and of course faith in progress. So he's linking all these ideas together, that if we are able to invent and make new things, we can see our progress through inventions, through making better tools and whatever that might be, going from horse and buggy and wagons to trains and to ships that go across the ocean. If we can see our material progress, that means that we have an inevitable faith in that progress, that we're able to make better tools, that it is like that we're convinced, or we're satisfying our need of progress, that if we can make these better things, if we have the next webcam that comes out, the next phone, if these technologies that come out, we believe that things are better. But what Postman is questioning here is that what happened to discussing the use of those technologies, such as our leisure time. What should you spend your leisure time on? We have more and more leisure time than anyone has ever had. We all of us today live as if a king did in the medieval period. We live better than kings. Right? What a king would have, the leisure time a king would have, and the various luxuries a king might have. All of us have that and more. We all live like kings. How should we be living under such a condition? The question is less relevant when you're farming all day and you're breaking your back, and whenever you have a break, you're essentially resting because your body is broken. But when you don't have to work all day and you can sit in a comfy office chair, and your working conditions are a million times better than what used to be, the moral question is more and more relevant. It's perhaps essential because of how much more time we have. And getting the next iPhone does not answer the question of what we do with our leisure time. The iPhone is just a more efficient use of that leisure time. Perhaps we can access information quicker now than we could by going to a library in the past. But it does not ask the question of what we are doing with that leisure time. And now we give some examples. This is on page 48. He says here, what new problems might be created because we have solved this problem? The automobile solved some very important problems for most people, but in doing so poisoned our air, choked our cities with traffic, and contributed toward the destruction of some of the beauty of our natural landscape. Antibiotics certainly solved some significant problems for almost all people, but in doing so resulted in the weakening of what we call our immune systems. Television solved several important problems, but in solving them changed the nature of political discourse, led to a serious decline in literacy, and quite possibly made the traditional process of socializing children impossible. And of course, by the last thing, he means about the control of upbringing, really. If you can't control the content as well, if it's on a TV. But there's a lot of good stuff in all that as examples of some of the side effects of what we might call progress. And I think just to kind of take a step back from the book for a second, I think that one of the essential points of Postman as I'm going through this is that we may need to step back as a people, as a species. Some people say that there may be a dark age coming because of the void of ideas and philosophy, really, that's been happening. And when a vacuum occurs, something has to fill it. And there may be a time where we step back and we say that in getting more and more destructive weapons, or whatever any technology you could really name, we have to discuss how we're using these things. And it reminds me of a Star Trek episode, The Next Generation, with Captain Picard and all that. It's an episode where they're visiting a planet and they're making what's called a first contact. And that means that the planet hasn't had, it is not, it's pre-warp. It does not have spaceships that can leave its own solar system. It's what we are right now. We're pre-warp. And what happens is when the Federation discovers the planet and discovers the people there, of course they don't show themselves. They remain invisible. And they study the culture of the planet and the peoples by sending down people that are like spies, kind of like spies, but they're peaceful, and they surgically alter their appearances so they can kind of integrate, and they study the culture for a few years and decide whether they think they're ready to make first contact, to actually appear to their world president or their world government and reveal who they are and ask if they wish to be guided in their transition to a galactic civilization, a civilization that goes beyond their planet and their solar system, right? And to be updated on the circumstances of the galaxy, right, with all the other races that are out there. And this particular episode, there are some things that happen with one of the people that are spying on them. They get discovered. But anyways, what happens is that at the end of it, it's decided that the civilization is not going to make like they meet. Picard meets the world leader several times, but eventually the world leader decides that his race, his people, are not ready to engage with a world where there are other races already far more powerful and flying around in spaceships and have very destructive weapons and all this stuff. That his people are not ready to go down that path. The people are still, and which is kind of funny because Star Trek is great. It's always a commentary on our present stage. Of course, that planet of those people, they all believe that they're the only species in the universe. And the shock to know that they're no longer alone would be, I guess, disastrous. At least that world leader thought it would be. So he declined the invitation to join a galactic playground with all those other races around. And the point is that there may be a stepping back for this world at some point, where we reach a point, and there may be some kind of conflict or crisis. That's usually what happens, and then there's some kind of resolution, right? There may be a point where we have to kind of stop and make some new social organizations. We have to decide that, look, the left-right dichotomy isn't working anymore. We can't continue this. We can't continue what we're doing. We have to get rid of corrupt politics, and states are becoming too powerful and are weakening civil liberties, whatever it might be. Eventually there's going to be some kind of halt and a establishment of a new order, a new myth, or you call it whatever you want, a new philosophy, a new orthodoxy, or a new approach to civilization, or approach to social organization. And that will be, again, that'll be engaging with the normative as opposed to simply ignoring those questions and building better iPhones or better missiles. Here's another this is another example, really. He talks about Adam Smith. who of course was in the 18th century, who wrote The Wealth of Nations. And in The Wealth of Nations, he discusses this transition from what used to be called the cottage industry, which means that people would make things really in their own towns, that you'd have like a blacksmith, and you'd have a shoemaker. People would have like a storefront and then live in the back. And those cottage industries would be people making clothing and all those kinds of things, right? But Adam Smith was discussing and kind of predicting this transition from a cottage industry into industry, into going from small scale, and this is from the book here, small scale, personalized, skilled labor, to large scale, impersonal, mechanized production. And Postman says that what sort of people and institutions might acquire special economic and political power because of technological change? This question needs to be asked because significant technological change always results in a realignment of power. He also discusses television briefly. On page 52, he says that, I'll just paraphrase it, television has changed political discourse because now we see the candidates, and today and this is definitely true in Canada, we just elected Prince Trudeau. Charisma is what matters most, it seems. Charisma is humongously important now versus in the past. And he mentions several U.S. presidents. He says the 27th president, William Howard Taft, was fat, very fat, well in excess of 300 pounds. We may assume that this physical condition would make him an unsuitable candidate in our own time. Of course, the New Jersey governor, Chris Christie, he's heavy too, but he's up there. It also mentions FDR was crippled by polio and could not stand unaided. So that would have hurt him if he was around today. And it also mentions Robert Dole, recent candidate Robert Dole, inability to project an easy amiability on television. I don't know what that means, but maybe he was unlikable or something. But yeah, so the medium, this using television, using debates, now we are seeing how they act and what they look like. And this has now infected the political process. Whereas before, we might read about a candidate's platform in the New York Times, right? In the 19th century, which is when it began. We might read the platform. We don't really care what the guy looks like. We just want to know what his platform is, what he promises to do, whether he's going to raise taxes or not, or what kind of benefits he's going to give. But now that is kind of surface level stuff, as long as it's relatively mild and there's nothing really radical. We don't care so much. Now we care more about whether they can. We care about their debating skills, whether they can. I guess in the case of Trump, whether they can bully other people and they can look powerful, and whether they look decent. That's what people. Trump's hair, what? Why does that matter? But it does on television. You see, so this is all. The television has infected the political discourse, which is wildly different than what it was in the past. You have people like Taft, overweight Taft, and polio, FDR, etc. I guess the sad thing is that if there was a candidate today who was ugly and of poor health, like whatever irrelevant criteria you can name, had one leg, or I don't know, it doesn't matter, anything you want to, any irrelevant criteria, but they did not have a good TV presence, they would not be president, even if they were a political genius, or they would be a very good leader. They would not be electable because they're not charismatic.